Welcome, Richard. It's great to see you. This time we're talking about Ray Harvey, one of the legends of the club.
Yes.
To set the scene, Ray, of course, was a member of the famous Harvey family, one of four boys.
Five, actually.
Five,
Harold didn't play ones. He did a handful of games in the ones, but mostly in the seconds.
Yes.
But Merv, Mick, Neil and Brian all played in the ones.
Yes. And of course Merv and Neil played for Australia. Neil was and still rated one of the most outstanding batters of all time in the game.
Yes.
Interesting, when I was doing a little bit of research on Harvey, they were mentored by a famous name at Fitzroy and also a famous name at Preston.
Arthur Liddicoat.
Arthur Liddicoat.
Yes.
So the Liddicoat family are associated closely with
very
Preston.
much so, because his nephew Stan played at Preston and played more than 100 games for Preston in the ones.
Gee. Ray started off playing for Fitzroy in the early 40s, from recollection.
He did.
Playing with Fitzroy. He was a classic batsman, would you?
Yes, I'd say very correct. Bill Lawrie described Ray Harvey as the best cricketer he ever saw in Premier.
Gee whiz.
And Ray did play state cricket, played about 40 matches, but he started at about 17 when he went to Fitzroy and was what I'd describe as a natural sportsman. People like he, Jack Potter, was just so good at any ball game they played, and both baseballers.
Yes.
And just as good.
Yes. And Ray was also a fantastic leg spin bowler.
He was. Didn't bowl a lot in Premier, but in the sub-district cricket, where the wickets were a bit underdone, he could turn the ball.
Yes.
And he could bowl a flipper, but he couldn't show you how he bowled it. So, and I still remember, as I mentioned to you, he had one game where he took 12 wickets against Brunswick. I played in that game and he took 6 and 6, and we won outright in the one day. We batted day one, but then we dismissed them twice on day two. And he got 6 wickets in each innings. Yeah.
Phenomenal. Let's just have a look at his record with Preston. When did he first come?
He came to Preston in 61, 62, and that was a coup to get him. But he had played the previous year with Fitzroy, and right through his career with Fitzroy. But they'd won the premiership, and in 60-61 under Jack Potter's leadership, and Ray was a Preston boy anyway in many respects after they grew up in Fitzroy, but he lived up in O'Connor Street Reservoir. And I don't know what we actually paid him to come, but he worked with the tramways department locally, and I think it was a bit of a low-down misère that he was always going to come to Preston.
Right, yes.
And he lifted the club enormously. Probably, in terms of being a gentleman, he was the best. The most unassuming person for all of the success that he'd had in the game. He was just genuinely respected and liked, and he wouldn't tolerate poor behaviour. I suspect he'd take a very strong view about some of the things that go on in the game now.
Was he a big man or a short man like his brother?
No, he was short.
Yes.
He was probably 5'8", the old money.
Yes, yeah.
And it was said that if he had been a little bit harder, he could have played Test cricket.
Yes.
But he enjoyed the game and he just took it as it came. And I must admit, if there's anybody you could model yourself on, he would be the man.
Okay. He played 20 years or thereabouts with Fitzroy.
Yes.
Scored a power of runs, which we will highlight on the Facebook page, at a fantastic average. And in first class cricket, he had an average of, which wasn't great, but was over 30 from memory.
An average of 30.
Yeah.
Didn't bowl a lot in first class cricket, but in Premier cricket, made 19 centuries in all those years that he played, 15 or so. And was a wonderful fieldsman. I've seen him do something. I was playing with him in one match, and we had a quick bowler in Ken Dunbar, and he bowled the football a bit full, and the batsman went forward to cover drive it, but it was late on the shot, so that it effectively deflected into the gully, bounced, and Harvey, who loved to field gully, they talked about Nookie Swanson, but he was as good as Nookie ever was, and he took it one bounce and threw the stumps down, and the batsman had gone on his forward shot
Right.
out of his crease. Just phenomenal.
He played baseball with Fitzroy from memory.
He did, and in later years played at Coburg,
Okay.
and then umpired. And
Okay.
he reached an elite level as a baseball umpire. No one would argue with him, but
Yes.
we just respected him.
Yes, yes. He was club champion 3 of his 5 years with Preston.
Yes, had some bit of competition from people like Cole Miller and Bill Lawrie.
Yes.
But yeah,
He won the batting average, I think, 3 times or thereabouts.
yes.
One year, I think his batting average was over 60.
Yes, he had some phenomenal years. With his highest year, I think he made in excess of 600 runs, and in excess of 400 in a couple of other years as well.
And won the bowling average 2 or 3 times
He
as
did,
well.
absolutely. So,
A phenomenal average of
amazing.
12, 14.
His overall average as a bowler was to average nearly 40 wickets a year at an average of 12
Gee whiz.
for Slowie.
Yeah,
Pretty good.
that's amazing, isn't it? Did he spin the ball much?
He did.
Yeah.
He turned it a bit. But mostly, I think he just relied on bowling accurately.
Yeah.
And he could bowl with a bit of variety.
Yes.
I mean, he could bowl a flipper. We just called them skidders in those days. Just to bowl it was quite an ability, really, and something we wanted to learn. But he could, if there was one thing he might have struggled with, as I think even people like Jack did, they had such a natural talent. They wondered why others didn't.
Yes.
And they struggled to make the transition across to explain it to you in ways where I've found the more ordinary player understands the basics a bit better and can show you how to address any shortcomings you might have.
Yes.
The really talented players just go out and do it.
Yes, yes. Let's talk about the fabulous year of 64-65, which was the first premiership. So he was captain of that side. Was that going to be his last year with the club, or did it turn out to be his last year with the club?
No, it didn't.
No.
He played it at least one more year.
Right.
And I think he finished the following year, and then Bill Lawrie retired the year after. Okay,
right. So 64-65, we won our first premiership, and it was clearly an excellent side. As captain of that side, he had Bill. He had, in terms of the fast bowlers, who were they?
He had Ken Dunbar.
Yes, who
Carl
took 400
Adams.
wickets.
Carl Adams was another person he brought from Fitzroy. We had Harold Shillinglaw as well, but Shillinglaw was a bit of a loose cannon. He only came one year, refused to pay his fees, so he sort of got walked out of the door. But Carl Adams was the most interesting bowler. He bowled huge in-swingers. And Carl got over 50 wickets in the same year. That Dunbar got 40-odd, Lewin 30-odd, and Ray Harvey 40-odd.
Right.
So that was the bowling.
Tell me about the grand final and Ray's part in that grand final.
Yeah, very interesting grand final. Oakley were a very formidable side. They had Val Holden, they had Ron Munyard, they had John Jury as a bowler, Sam Blackburn, a very good and competitive side. And we had done well to get there. The teams of those days were very strong. Moorabbin were very strong, and Brighton. We actually gave Brighton a bit of toweling in the so-called grand final. And we moved on to the championship. Preston batted first and didn't make a lot of runs. It was down at Elstonwick, which wasn't the best of grounds to have a final. But anyway, we made a reasonable score, which doesn't sound a lot to make 140, but the wickets in those days had a bit in them too.
Yeah.
And Oakley went into bat, and we had a bowler who was capable of bowling sort of seamers, Ray Lawton. And fortunately for us, we got Holden in early. And we thought if we got him at a vulnerable stage, we could pick him up. And Ray Lawton bowled him with a leg cutter, which just turned the game. So they went to stumps at 5 for 50.
Right.
Still chasing 140.
Plenty to think about.
They did, and they made a fight of it. And the interesting thing about the way the game finished was Ray Harvey was bowling, and the last batsman in, I don't know what he was thinking, but he actually played the ball and then got out of his crease, and Gary Marshall, the wicketkeeper, grabbed the ball and took the bails off.
Right.
After the sort of stroke had been played, but nobody was going anywhere, and got the stumping.
Right.
And the final, and we won it by 25 runs.
Right, okay.
So it was a huge lift for the club, because from there we've had our most successful period. I was looking at the statistics, and Preston now figures in one of the top 4 clubs in the whole competition in terms of its success over the years.
Gee.
And it was a very dry period from coming into subbies in 22, 23 up to that point. We'd had 40 years and we'd had 1 grand final.
Gee. And then we had 40 years where we were mostly in the finals and
hardly ever out.
Yes, which was quite extraordinary in itself.
It was,
Back to Ray. How old would Ray have been when he made the decision to retire?
Ray retired in 66. He was 40.
40, right.
Yeah, 1926
Okay.
he was born.
Yeah.
I actually got on well with him, and in years afterwards I used to visit him. And I think his great disappointment, not that he would say so, but he had sport ran in their family, and his wife was Lorna, and Lorna was the sister of Keith Cant, who also played cricket and was a very good baseballer. So all the sporting vibes were there, and his son was only interested in trains.
Right.
And so Ray had to get used to the fact that sport wasn't going to feature.
Right, okay, yeah. He passed away, I think, in 2011.
He did.
Yes.
85.
Aged 85. A great part of our history was Ray Harvey. As I say, the Facebook page will cover off on all the statistics that we've been able to put together, or you've been able to put together, which would be great. But it's good to look back on such a fantastic player.
Yeah, and it was a great period for the club. And I think we think about losing touch with people, but we had a very interesting setup administratively. The committee could have as many as 20 people on it.
Wow.
And maybe 15, 16, 17 of those were non-players.
Right.
And it wasn't an easy meeting.
Yes.
There were some strong differences of opinion about how things got done, whereas today
Yes,
we've got half a dozen and we're desperately looking for people. But that group moved on over time too, as did the players, and we lost touch, unfortunately, with a lot of people.
All right. Thank you, Richard. That was great.
Yeah.